εις το όνομα του Πατρός και του Υιού και του Αγίου Πνεύματος. Αμήν. Χριστέ, το φως του αληθινών, το φωτίζουν και αγιάζουν πάντα άνθρωπον ερχόμενοι στον κόσμο. Σημειωθεί το εφημάς το φως του προσώπου σου, είναι ένα αυτό ψώμαθα φως του απρόσιτον και κατεύθυνον τα διαβήματα ημών προς εργασίαν των εντολών σου, πρεσβείας Παναχράν σου Μητρός και πάνω των Αγίων. Αμήν. Do you think we know what we're doing?
The purpose of these talks is to basically have a conversation with each other, and the speaker reveals a part of their life where they actually had a turning point and they realized that they wanted to follow Christ with all their heart for the rest of their life. So at some point of their life, they had a moment of, what would you call that moment? Clarity, a revelation, and they knew that for the rest of their life, they will never leave the church. They will stay in the church, and that's what they're going to do. Yeah. So, having introduced how the talks will go, I'll give you back to Bishop Iakovos, and he can...
Keep going. You're doing well. Keep going.
And he can tell you the rest. I had met Bishop Iakovos how long ago?
Well, what year?
I don't even know. 1997, was it?
GD at least.
Was it?
No.
2001? No. No. When did I meet you?
On
93.
On our first day, no. First day at the college.
When was that? I can't remember.
He used to be the same trying to hand up his essays. He was always a few weeks late.
Well, yeah.
When was it? 92.
Was it 92?
Was 92 our first
Or
year?
93?
No, 93 was our second year. No, 91.
No, it wasn't 91.
No, think about it. Wait. The Theological College. Yeah. I was in third year. I was ordained as a deacon in my second year, which was 93. So 92.
Okay. So we had met in 1992, and that was at the Theological College. And we've been pretty good friends ever since, I hope. Yeah, and our journey sort of took a different path. Bishop Iakovos became a deacon in the second year, and from there, you know, he was next to the Archbishop, the previous Archbishop Stylianos, and then he was ordained, and then after that he came to Oakley, and from Oakley then you became the Bishop of Melbourne. Yeah. And my journey was different. I had finished the college, always told him that I wouldn't be present for the graduation. I would never receive that piece of paper from Melbourne University. I said, no, I'm not going to be there. And they thought I was joking, but I never went. I ended up going to Athos instead. So I thought that's where I'll end up. But God has other plans, I suppose, for all of us. So. But anyway, so that's the little journey. So Bishop Iakovos will take from here. And I remember having a conversation with him and him telling me his journey, how he became, he knew he would become a priest. I remember, and that was in, I'll let you finish the rest. So, there we go.
Now that we have that out of the way, I want to thank His Grace. I'm supposed to say that. As a guest speaker, I'm supposed to thank him. But really, I don't want to be here. Because I've been here, and I was here for 18 years. Some of you may remember me, others are probably new faces, but I had the opportunity to come to Melbourne and to serve our church here in Oakley for 9 years, and then 9 years after that as bishop alongside our senior bishop, Bishop Ezekiel, he's been in Melbourne over 35 years. As His Grace mentioned briefly about how we met, and I guess what he's wanting, because I asked him, I go, what do you want to achieve with these conversations? And he said to be engaging with each other, not so much just to talk about my journey so that you get to know me, but more so, I think, so that you can maybe see yourselves and start to understand better your own journeys. Because we're all journeying together, whether you are, because we're all baptized, firstly. We all belong to Christ and His church. We are all members of His kingdom, even though we are citizens of this earth as well. Yeah, and that's it. No. Who would have thought? But anyway.
Yeah, we always laugh
No.
with each other.
Because deep down we're still those first year students.
So it is. Yeah.
You know, we haven't changed, even though we have in many other ways, but deep down we're still the same first year students with our eyes and our hearts open to Christ and the journey that He wants from us. You mentioned finding Christ. I would also say to be found by Christ. Finding Christ is our effort, but being found by Him is, again, the other side to that. And I want you, please, what I will share with you, or try to share, will only be, hopefully, just to trigger. I know you can't use that word. You get triggered if you say trigger. Whatever will be shared this evening should not be taken, or should not be allowed to become, in your own minds, boasting on my behalf, or boasting on behalf of His Grace or anyone else. Okay? Because our journey humbles us. We can't boast when we know that it is God who acts and intervenes and guides and nurtures and nourishes and saves and sanctifies. We are the raw material in His hands, as we were right from the beginning with Adam, when God took from the earth the raw material and created Adam, and from Adam created Eve. That story and Adam's story is retold in our lives, each one of us. Living in obedience to God, living in disobedience to God, and then becoming estranged and so forth. And there may be, amongst the things that I will share, this is a long intro, but anyway, I wanted to write something, and he said, no, don't write anything. I had books open to read, and he goes, don't, just speak. All right, fine. There may be things that resonate with you and other things that may not, but I think the outcome that we're trying to achieve is to encourage each other, to learn from each other. So these are conversations, so it's not just a one way, it's a conversation, hopefully. My parents came from Greece. They were migrant parents. They came here in 1955. They worked very, very hard to establish themselves, to raise their family honestly. with high moral standards as they had learnt from their own parents, and keep their family nurtured in the faith and close to the church. Everything in my childhood growing up pretty much moved between these two words, me and ohi. Me and ohi, which means no and stop. Think of this in contrast to today, where it's all supposed to be yes, 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 whatever you want. The opposite. The training wheels were put on from a young age. Me ke ohi. Can I do this? Ohi. But why? My neighbour's doing this. No, we don't do this. Can I go there? Ohi. Why? Because we don't do this. Because it doesn't fit with our faith. How can you be living with the living God and go and do these things? They don't go together. This is our family. This is what we believe. And since we believe, we have to live in that way. So it was in that environment, very simple and clear, outlined every day in our interactions with my siblings and my parents, reinforced daily that this is how we lived our Christian faith in the household and then outside as well. The faith was nurtured. We, as a family, would go to church every Sunday. Sunday was always God's day. There was no soccer or tennis or anything else on Sunday morning. We knew from the youngest of young, and I say these things so that you also understand, maybe your upbringing has been the same or different, but you will become parents, and so you should know these things as well. Lipon. It was not, there was never any need for negotiation because it was a no-brainer. Sunday for us was church. My brothers and I were altar boys from my earliest recollection when I was about 4 years old. And my brothers, when they got older, they used to go to Sunday school because they liked to play with the other kids. And I stayed in the altar with Father Nicholas all my life, even to early mid-20s, when I was called to follow Christ in a different way. But before I get to the calling and that moment that changed everything, going through primary school and high school, like everyone else, you get influenced or pressured or enticed by your environment. And I remember in year 8, I had a crisis of conscience where I noticed my group of friends were starting to experiment and try other things that we had not done in year 7 or in year 6 or in year 5 or so on. So up until that point, the journey was common and safe, I suppose. But in year 8, they started to do other things, and I didn't want to try these other things. And I had to make a decision because I thought, if I go and do this or that, my parents won't know because it will be without their knowledge. But I will feel inside myself that I have betrayed them or betrayed myself, who I am.
You didn't feel like you were betraying Christ? It was basically...
Well, no. It was parents, family, and obviously the values that we have from from God, which shaped everything. Me και όχι. Me και όχι is not just my mother saying, I don't want you to do this. No. There was always the qualifier, because God doesn't want this from you. In everything. My parents had understood their high responsibility before God for the children that they were given. So I continued, sometimes alone. That's when I discovered the library, going to the library at lunchtime because your friends have gone elsewhere. You couldn't eat in the library. I don't know if you can eat now. But no, I used to eat my sandwiches outside quickly and then go inside and look like I was busy so that I could sort of sit there for an hour or whatever it was and then go back to class. Also something that you should know, I was prone to what my teachers called daydreaming. But I think it wasn't just daydreaming as in thinking about empty things. It was more being aware or present to the presence. As kids, did you ever lie on the ground and look at the clouds, look at the sky, think of how vast everything is, how vast God is, that all of this exists between his hands? Like to think about life and about creation and about everything, which is important. We need to have that time to think, and many times we can't find the time. We have so many things that compete for our time and so many things that fill up our time that we have absolutely no time for contemplation, no time for prayer, no time for meaningful reflection on self, on God. Everything's just becomes sometimes just a blur. And these things do affect us. Living this way does undermine our stability, our emotional well-being, our psychological well-being, our spiritual well-being. Living this way creates within us an unhealthy outlook on life many times, the way we relate to each other and life in general. I say these things so that we can maybe, in discussion, try and look at how we can claim back our lives, claim back a sense of self, claim back some time to have silence. Ησυχία, as the fathers say. Going through high school, like my friends, my cousins, after high school, people started to get married. And my cousins of the same age, they started to get married. And I remember my parents saying to me, και στα δικά σου, every time we went to a wedding, στα δικά σου, which means, and to yours. And to yours. It's a generous well-wishing upon you. Και στα δικά σου. But I remember, I think it was 21, 22, somewhere there, and I was going through about a 2-year period of soul-searching. After high school, I walked the earth for about 10 years. In those early years, there was a time, even though I had always thought of that I would marry, have my family, my home, like everyone else, I had never, up to that point, considered priesthood, or going to the theological college or anything like that. But there was, as I said, in that journey, a period of going through the motions externally, day to day, but there was an interior journey of losing myself and detaching from everyone and everything, all the relationships, even what I thought, even with God, only to end up absolutely lost and desperate, knowing that I have to turn and face Him, knowing that I have to turn and face myself, and have the courage to do that, the humility to do that, and to stop blaming everyone and all the external circumstances and so forth, without going into all the details. But asking to be found, asking to be saved. And I said these words in my heart of hearts when I finally had enough and said, without you there is nothing. Without you, my parents, my family, the food, anything and everything had lost its flavor, its taste, its smell, its ability to console or to fulfill.
What was it that made you realize that? What was it? Just one day you woke up and you realized that? What was it?
You learn to live, fractured or broken, or whichever way, these things happen to each one of us. I think what happened was, at this particular moment, that beginning of clarity, which I believe wasn't from me, it was from God, reaching out slowly, because He doesn't come and give Himself completely and wipe us out. No, He wants us to have the center stage. He wants us to have our free will to either do the right thing or not. And so I think He was revealing Himself slowly, and that was resonating with deep within, that I needed to be freed from all of this catastrophe.
Okay, whereas you talk to other people, and some other people have a revelation through, it was revealed to them suddenly. Others, every journey is different. Whereas you needed that slow process, that revelation, in the way that it came, for you to understand who God is and follow and learn more about Him and love Him a little bit more and dedicate your life to Him. Correct? Is that how?
I'm getting there.
I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah, I know you. I know you want me to say what you want me to say, but I'll get there.
Everyone feel free to ask questions as well, if you like, as we speak.
Yeah. I tried to. I tried to. As we are raised ideally. You're raised and you take on the faith of your parents, the faith of your family. That's why the most important thing is that the parents baptize you from the earliest moments of your life so that you can begin that journey with Christ. But I believe that there is a time in each person's life where that faith that you have as a child has to become yours as an adult, willingly, with your whole being. What was the rest of the question? I tried to stop going to church, but I couldn't because that was part of the facade that I kept up. So I was still going through the motions. There were times where I just didn't want to go, and I couldn't even face the icons in my room at times. I just didn't want to look. There's a lot of bitterness, a lot of pain, a lot of heartache. But going to church, I remember Father Nicholas, God bless him, he's still alive. He's in the nursing home, I look after him. He never asked me if I was upset or what was wrong. I knew that he was praying. He always tried just to cheer me up and encourage me and what have you. My spiritual father at the time was Father Stephanos from Pandanasa, and I had stopped going to confession, which obviously spoke loudly to him that something was happening. But he would speak to my mother and say, where is he? My mother would tell him, what's going on. And my father as well, they both went to him and asked for his help.
He would tell her, bring out the kutala.
The kutala? No, there were threats of violence, but they knew that wasn't it. No. But his advice to them was just don't agitate him, don't aggravate him, just pray for him and just be there. Pray for him, but really pray that, he finds his way. And that particular morning at 4:30, whatever it was, I was at work, and for the first time, this inner voice, this thing that I said earlier about, without you, there is nothing. Take it all from me. Take everything. Without you, there's nothing. That's when God began to reveal himself, and I began to be found by him. And that particular morning, I went for a walk up the road, and I just remember hearing someone whistling. And it was me. Like I was happy. And just day after day, I realized, something's changing. Something's changing. And then a week later, some friends asked me to baptize their child, and I thought, that's another sign. It's a good sign. And I started to change. A week after that, 2 weeks after that, maybe a month after that, that's when the clarity, that's when God showed me clearly what he wanted.
How old were you then?
22, 23. Both. Yeah, there's a lot of harsh judgment, a lot of self-justification. I'm like this because. Okay. It's a lot of wounded pride. That's what it is, the wounded self. Probably there was as I said, there were around me people getting married. Was I feeling always the bridesmaid, never the bride, or the groom? You can be whatever you want these days. But always the groomsman, never the groom. For those of you who don't know me, I do have some humour. Those of you who do know me, you'll say, he's back. Live on.
He's back in town.
Yeah. If you can imagine all of the ugliness that we can carry within us, all the ugliness that we can manufacture as well, all the ugliness that the devil can also give us, because he loves us when we're like that. He loves us so much. In this particular book, I was reading on the plane, Saint Joseph, Elder Joseph the Hesychast, ask the devil. That's why you should read spiritual books, read the lives of the saints, read the Bible, because this is God's word to us, God's journey, our journey. We're nourished and nurtured. He was speaking to the devil, Elder Joseph, and he said to him, why? Why do you take such joy in tormenting everyone? And the devil said, so that on Judgment Day I can say to the Nazarene, I know. I can say to the Nazarene, see, it's not just me, it's all of them as well. That they're all mine. They're not yours. You died for them, but they're mine. There. Don't know how I got onto that. No, the ugliness. Anyway,
So at
22. In the journey, there have been moments of divine intervention. As I said, my parents were raised in traditional Greek Christian households. Their parents, my dad's father was a priest, my father's brother was a priest, my mother's uncle was a priest. There were priests in the family. My mother, as a child in a village, used to love her recreational, when she wasn't working in the field or sewing or what have you, her hobby was to run to the little chapel on the hill in the village where the cemetery was every day, and to light the kadilya, the little oil lamps. When the village would have a feast, a panigiri, dancing and so on, my mother never liked to dance, so she would run to the other mountaintop and light the kadilya there. And so she would always have an excuse to put her time to prayerful good use and not. And so she had from a young age a very deep and real childlike connection with God, with the Virgin Mary, with the saints, especially St. John the Baptist and St. Paraskevi, St. Nectarios, St. Michael the Archangel. Yeah. So when she gave birth to me, I was born 2 months premature, so I was a 7-month pregnancy. And on my deathbed, after just being born, the doctors had no way of me surviving, but my mother saw St. John the Baptist in her dream. And he said to her that I am with you and that I won't allow this child to die, but you must dedicate him to me. And you must give him my name. So my name was Ioannis. And at that time, one of the other girls from the village who was an orphan, her name was Theodouli, which means, what does Theodouli mean? Servant of the Lord. Yeah? Yeah, Theodouli. At the time when my mother was in hospital and I was on my deathbed, the Theodouli, who knew my mother from Greece, but they had never met here, like they came out on the ships. But Theodouli had come to Australia and she had seen in her dream as well St. John the Baptist and said, you must go to this hospital. Potula, my mother, Potula, Paula, Panayota, has just given birth. The boy is to die. But go and tell her what I told her, that the boy will not die, but you must name him Ioannis. And so my mother's in hospital now, thinking the worst. What will happen? And my And Theoduli, who became my godmother, comes into her room. My mother sees her now. They had not seen each other since Greece. And, how are you here? And she said, the Prodromos, the Baptist, told you this and this and this. And I'm here because I saw the same. You must do this. And why I say this as a precursor to the calling, the moment in at 22 or whatever it was. As I said, I was in the altar as an altar boy up until my early 20s, and I'm still there. It was on the feast of St. John the Baptist. My church in Sydney, my parish growing up was St. John the Baptist. And it was on his feast day in 1991 where the new bishop of our church, Bishop Seraphim, had come to the church on the 28th of August for the Vespers of the 29th, which is the feast of the beheading of St. John the Baptist. It's his major feast. My mother was in the congregation, my nonna was in the congregation. They were both praying for me that I be helped. And Bishop Seraphim, after the Vespers, I had met him once before, just got his blessing and that's it. He came into the altar after having given out the bread, the arto, and he asked for a glass of water. I gave him a glass of water, and he said to me, "What's your name?" I said, "Ioannis." He said, "Chronia pola. What do you do?" I told him what I was doing, where I worked. And then, completely out of the blue, he said to me, "Have you ever wanted to become a priest?" And someone responded, "Yes." And when I looked around, it was just the two of us in the room. And that yes came from within, not here. Didn't think, it was just like, you like that story, I know, yeah. Yeah. And so he said, "Well, what are you waiting?" These are his words. "What are you waiting for? Come with me." And then we made preparation for paperwork and enrollment in a theological college. Sorry? In Sydney, in Redfern, where the Archdiocese is situated in Redfern. On site is the theological college, where Father studied, Vasily studied. Who else has studied at the college? None yet? You can still do it. You can do it online. Who? Yes? It's, and Manoli's going to go as well. I must say, without just passing over it so quickly, that at that particular moment of the yes, with that yes, everything changed. Everything at that instant changed. The cloudiness or the bitterness in the stomach, in the mouth, the dark, everything was gone. There was only peace. I'd never felt that before. Never in my life. How could I feel that before? Even on my best day with my friends doing the best things that we could do. This eclipsed everything. It was like all of the best of everything that in my childhood growing up, going out, doing whatever, having the best of fun, anything, all of that is like nothing compared to this. This was completely, something else. And that obviously is God's intervention, God's presence. It was his calling. He called and I responded, or he found me and I was found. Everything changed at that moment. And just when we finished the Vespers, the service and everything that night, as I was going to the car with Mum and Dad and my brothers, my nonna, who's passed now, Theoduli, she came up to greet me to say, for your name day, Χρόνια πολλά, best wishes. She looked at me and she goes, something happened to you tonight. She was a special lady. That's for another night of talking. Yeah.
So when you said nothing better occurred in your life, so just so you know a little bit about Bishop Iakovos as well, he used to be into cars, correct? Well, now he's not allowed to, but he used to be into cars. So, you'd get a brand new, you were a Holden man, weren't you?
Holden came later.
Yeah, well, he told me one story where he bought a brand new, there were cars that every young man wanted to have in our day. It was called a Charger. So it was this hotted up car, you would be on a slant like that. There would be really hot wheels, big tires at the back. And then, I said, okay. And I said, okay, what did you do with it? He's a really good driver, by the way. And he said, well, we went out for a drive with my brothers, remember? And he said, I hammered it. I gave it all he'd had. So I said, how fast were you going?
140.
Yeah. And that was miles in those days. It wasn't kilometres. And the next thing you heard was, is that when you blew? Yeah, he blew up the motor. He was going.
I blew the head gasket.
Oh, the head gasket. Same thing. And then they had to be towed back home. And your brother still got that, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got a collection.
Yeah. He's still got the Charger, a few others. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Sometimes he tells me, "Hey, I'll bring it around, take it for a drive."
That can't happen anymore.
It's like an old relationship. I don't want to go back to that. Well, it wouldn't be the same. I don't know. No, it was back then. It served its purpose. Yeah. Good. Thank you. That was the next part that I had to sort of touch on. So after that moment of conversion, what would you call it? Enlightenment, yeah. Connection with God, that most intimate connection with God. Everything, as I said, everything changed. I had absolutely no problems anywhere with anyone or anything, nothing. Everything was complete peace and trust in God. Trust in God. Okay. Complete surrender. So I knew He was driving and I was going along for the journey and I was going to give myself completely. And what happened was, in the first year at the college where we met and we started our journey together, God forgive us. No, it was a wonderful journey, and has been. In the first year, we're both lay people, and somewhere in the first year, Bishop Seraphim, we had him as our lecturer as well, and in liturgics, and often he would throw like little comments to the class. We'll ordain John soon. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not ready. I'm waiting for the next calling. To answer your question, I had many. I used to, with Bishop Seraphim, I used to drive him to the church services and what have you. So I would also look after, and that way we had chance to talk a lot and what have you. I learnt a lot from him, as we all did. And in second year, he really started to put the pressure on, thinking, you need to be ordained. I go, well, I don't know if I want to be married or celibate. And he goes, no. I don't. And by the way, I'd already gone to Mount Athos twice. Once before I went to the college, and then once at the end of first year. And I'd said to God, if I want to go one more time, like twice. I went the first time, the second, so I want to go one more time before I am ordained. Anyway, I went the second time at the end of first year. In second year, he starts putting the pressure on even more and trying different ways to get me to think and hopefully to commit. And I remember once it was I was sitting in his office, and he got really frustrated with me because he could see something and I couldn't see it, and I wasn't going to commit until I could see it, obviously, yeah. And so I said to him, how will I know? All my life I was planning to marry. How am I not going to be a married priest now? And he goes, yeah, but you've gone to Athos twice. I can see that you're more leaning this way. And I go, yeah, but I need to be 100% sure. I need to know, like that moment of clarity, that calling, where it was irrefutable. I mean, you could convince me through evidence and argument that my parents are not my biological parents, but you'll never be able to convince me of that moment that it was not real and from above. Okay, that's what I'm certain on, and that, at the end of the day, after I've been broken down so many times in the journey, that's the only thing that saves me, getting back up from there, from ground zero and starting again. Does it make sense? Yeah. Yeah, because Yerada, late Archbishop Stylianos in confession, had asked me once, after I told him that I was completely broken into 1,000 pieces, and I tried to run away so many times from Oakley. And so to give myself comfort, I would get on the highway to go to the Dandenongs, drive for 2 hours as I was escaping, like a kid. I'm running away from home, and you've got your bag, and you get outside the door, and you run around the corner, and you come back. I'd go for 2 hours and I'd pray. I'd be crying and praying, crying and praying. And once I got out of my system and the courage, turn around and come back for fellowship, for meetings, for whatever it was. Live on. So I say this, why? Sometimes you have to retreat in fear so that you can regroup and move forward. So you can find your feet, find God, have courage, and try again. And Archbishop Stylianos had asked me in confession after I told him all this. He goes, okay, I can understand that. Did you, in all of your desperation, did you ever question your calling? And I said, no, never. He goes, then I'm not afraid. You'll find your way. Yeah. And this is for each one of us. Find your way again.